How's it going? And welcome to episode 262 of On the Wire, proud member of the Pitcher List Podcast Network. I am Adam Howe, joined as always by Kevin Hastings, and thank you all for wading through everything with us. We took a week off due to unforeseen circumstances on both of our parts, and we did a little. Kevin, you did a fun little episode with Vlad Sedler over at FTN. A little joint venture that, if in case you weren't paying attention, you could only find on FTN. So hopefully you guys were all able to listen to that one, because you guys did a great job over there with that one. I am still counting that as episode 261 on our part, though. So it can be the quote lost episode as far as if you're looking through our feed, but happy to be back in front of the camera, in front of the mic with you this week, Kevin. How was your break? How was your All-Star break?
It was nice. I am, for as big of a baseball fan as I am, I don't really get into the All-Star festivities that much. I would have watched if I hadn't had other things going on, the actual game, but I did have other things going on with it being in the middle of the day in my time zone. I have no idea who did anything in the home run derby. Zero. And one of my guys, Jack Caglione, was in the derby. I saw a couple of his highlights. I just don't get into that. That does give me a couple day break, but I do try to really hit some of my team's issues in Fab last week, because a lot of people take that break along with the players. And so we'll see that in some of the rostership percentages for this week as well. I think, especially when it comes to pitching, single digit rostership percentages in 12s and close to 100% in 15s. The 15 team league players know if they want pitching, they have to get them the week before. Yeah. So things like that. But it was a nice little break and ready to get back at it.
Yeah, I do the same thing with the game. I end up following along with the home run derby only because that's the day of the home run derby is always the day that we do our first year player draft in my dynasty league. We don't do it in January; we do it in July. And we have
that's right. You sent me a text asking about a Royal prospect.
Yes. So we have Josh Hammond. I was curious about. I ended up trading for like the second to last pick in that draft, and we have a rule that's like, if you skip your pick, you have 24 hours to make it before you forfeit it. So I'm like, you know what? It's the second to last pick. I'm just gonna skip it, and I'm gonna take 24 hours and do added research, because we don't have that many players. We're not that deep in our minor league rosters. So Josh Hammond was one of my considerations. Did not end up drafting him. Went with Johnny Level, shortstop prospect. At the was he in the Pacific? He's still in like low A ball. But anyway, that it was fun. So we end up doing it at the same time as the home run derby. So we get on a little video chat, we those who can, and then most of us have the game on or have the home run derby on in the backgrounds. And so we are all kind of following along just by default. So I do know who won, and I know who he beat. So I'll leave the spoilers for you, Kevin.
Maybe I'll watch it this weekend.
Exactly. I don't want to spoil anything for you. But the only thing I got out of the All-Star game was Junior Caminero coming out.
Now that I did see, because it blew up social media immediately. There was a lot of fear, but fortunately, quickly, the fear was diminished.
Yes, exactly. So didn't even make my news list because fortunately, that seemed to be perfectly fine. I'm going to lead off our news section here with something that wasn't on here until 2 seconds ago, and I just halfway put it on here, only because I think most people were able to place action on this after this past fab period. But in case your league didn't, Zach Thornton was given a rotation spot by the Mets coming out of the All-Star break. Now, I don't see him scheduled to start this weekend, but that just should mean he should get a start for the Mets for the foreseeable future, starting on either Monday or Tuesday of next week. But he obviously came out of the gate swinging on Sunday before the break, earning that spot. Thoughts on Zach Thornton being a consideration if he wasn't picked up in your leagues this past Sunday?
I have some interest, especially in 15s. We have to have interest in just about anybody that we have coming up here these days. But he had been in consideration, I think, for some deep league players for a couple of weeks anyway. And now that we're getting this news that we believe we're going to see him in this rotation, I think this I think there's something here. I don't think we're going to get a 2.6 ERA like we've gotten in the 17 innings thus far. I think we may get better than the 4.5 projections. I think the strikeouts aren't elite, but they're not zero either.
Mm-hmm.
Typically low. That he's the walk percentage is going to be the issue for me. Because the strikeout rate itself is actually decent, but the walk rate is high as well. So his K minus BB kind of in the low teens is probably what we're expecting. The projections have him between 11 and 13%. But I think there's something here. Definitely it will depend on matchups, in my opinion. But yeah, we have to have interest in just about any healthy arm out there right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, just the fact that he's still 25% available in the main event, it's a little surprising after just in the main event. I didn't check 12 teamers. I'm just surprised that there wasn't more movement on him after the results he showed this past Sunday prior to the All-Star break. To your point, that you've got to make this kind of movement especially in 15 teamers wherever possible. Now, maybe it was because he probably won't start this weekend. At least I didn't see him as a probable for this weekend. And the Mets and the Phillies had that weird off day today as we're recording. It's on Friday, but still, would it still expect him to be gobbled up in most 15 teamers, especially if he does line up for a 2-step next week?
Yeah, he's only 9% in 12s if you're really looking deep in a 12-team league as well.
Wow, only 9%. Wait, 9% rostered or 9% available?
Rostered.
Wow, okay. 75% in the main, 9% in your OCs. Yeah, I mean, even in the 12-teamers though, if he does line up for that 2-step, regardless of who they might be facing, this could be a valuable ad at the top of your waterfall, or near the top of your waterfall bids with the state of pitching. Going across the country over to LA to the other coast, Will Smith continues to be shelved by the Dodgers, being announced that he's going to not do anything for about another week, at least, as he recovers from a neck ailment. Most likely, still no exact timetable being given for his return. So everybody who I've read is expecting at least till August, if not into August. So what are you doing with Will Smith? And, is there anything else that you can take advantage of? Are we still at a point where we can even take advantage of anything on the Dodgers with Will Smith being
out? Not really. As far as taking advantage of any changes in the lineups, Dalton Rushing was rostered fairly decently even before he started getting this extra playing time, because he was performing so well in the very limited playing time he'd had. Now that he's getting more regular playing time, he's a 5 to 6 starts per week catcher. He gets a break every 3 to 4 days. They sent down Chucky Robinson right before the break and brought up Elizer Alfonso. He's getting about 2 starts a week at catcher. So there's really nothing actionable there. I'm starting to wonder about, I know he may come back in 3 weeks. If I knew that, I would hold him. But in the couple of spots I have him, if I need that spot, I will consider dropping him at this point. I have that issue with another catcher where I got really lucky early in the season when Alejandro Kirk went down and I was able to grab Liam Hicks. Well, now in the 2 most recent lineups that I put in, I haven't used Kirk. Hicks is still outperforming him. So I'm dropping like what was drafted as a top 10 catcher. And I may do the same with Will Smith now at this point as well.
And that's really what's getting at. It's like, are we dropping Will Smith if he's going to be out for at least another 2 to 3 weeks, if not longer? And is he going to produce when he does come back out of the gate in comparison to that, Rushing, who's been replacing him admirably, especially with the added playing time. It's hard to hold on to a third catcher when that third catcher isn't an option. It's like you only have so many bench spots anyway. I mean, you're in after the All-Star break, man. All bets are off as far as like who you can drop and when you can drop them.
We talked a little about this last season too, Adam, where this time of year we started seeing some very well respected and fantasy players with great track records carrying 3 healthy catchers.
Right.
That's why I've held on to Kirk. And that has helped me in a couple of leagues where I replaced a guy like Kirk, or I was waiting on Herrera earlier in the season. And having 3 healthy catchers is really, really nice at times. Most of my rosters, that's a luxury I can't afford, but where I can, I will hold on to a third healthy one. I just don't know about on my IL any longer.
Mm-hmm. Fair. We're not quite at the trade deadline, so we're not quite going to see the big names being traded quite yet. Probably any day now we'll start seeing some bigger ones, but we did get one over the break with Lance McCullers being traded from Houston to Milwaukee. He was activated from the IL by the Brewers and added to their active roster. Lance McCullers are you expecting him to do anything in Milwaukee that's going to catch your eye? And are you adding him to any waterfall bids just because of the change of scenery?
Maybe not yet, but I am going to keep an eye on this. Lance McCullers himself was quoted. Well, I shouldn't say quote because I'm paraphrasing. I don't have it in front of me, but my role and my first appearance have yet to be determined here. he came out, he said that publicly. So we don't know. Jason over at Roster Resource has him in the long reliever spot at the moment, as he has not been told, or we haven't been told that he'll be entering the rotation. Milwaukee has needed to use a lot of starters at different times this season. Kyle Harrison out currently. We should be back, see him back soon. Some questions with Mizorowski coming out of the break, but I'm not too concerned about that. But Milwaukee has had to use more than 5 or 6 starters throughout the season. I expect that to continue. And at this point, we may see Lance McCullers when they need that guy. And when he's healthy, he's still been good in spots, even this season. I know overall the numbers aren't great, but I'll still definitely look at his matchups if he is getting starts.
Yeah. I'm going to do a tangent here. I'm going to give a shout out to my home league, and I know nobody cares about my home league, but going into the break, there was a pretty big trade in my home league where Mizorowski was traded for a whole bunch of future prospects and draft picks and stuff like that. It was probably the biggest trade our league has ever seen in that regard. In our rules state that when you draft somebody in the minor league draft, you give them a 4-year contract. So you can keep them down in the fantasy minors, even if they come up into the majors. And so he hadn't been called up yet. no matter how good he was, because he was the team that rostered him wasn't going anywhere anyway. So they didn't need to waste a major league roster. So once he was traded to the contender, they called him up in order to get the start that he was scheduled to have on Sunday against the team he just traded from. And he's like, oh man, this is going to be great, blah, blah, blah. And then like, couldn't have been an hour later, the announcement came that he was being pulled from that start due to fatigue. And no one in our league could hold back as far as giving him as much crap as possible. You gave up all that and you don't even get to start him. So shout out, Nick, ballsy move. We'll see how it works out for you throughout the course of the season. Same many starts, but that does lead me to ask him, like, how, like, do you trust Mizorowski to be as much of a fantasy asset to us for the second half of the year as he was for the first half of the year? Or are you concerned about this fatigue that they're reportedly saying he had going into the break? Do you expect Milwaukee to be skipping some starts or to limit his innings or do anything? Because obviously the most important thing for the Brewers is to have him perfectly healthy for a run that they might need to make in September and then preferably in October.
I think that's what we're seeing right now. Optimistically on my part, I think that's what we're seeing. Skip that last start before the break, delay his first start coming out of the break. Now Mizorowski has had a 10-day to 2-week break in the middle of the season, couple of bullpens, now get back out there, and then we'll do the same thing in September when we lock things up and we know we have a spot. I kind of optimistically, that's what I'm going with. I was asked by Joe Arrico probably a month and a half ago or so when I joined him on a podcast if I would trade Mizorowski in a redraft league. And I was absolutely not. He got me here. I'm going to ride him out. Right. Yep. He was of the opinion, and I get it. I understand that some people would, while he's maybe the number one trade value player in fantasy baseball, I'll get what I can for him and be thankful for what I got. I'm not with that. I'm riding him out, and whatever the Brewers do with manipulating the innings, hopefully it doesn't mess me up too bad.
Yeah. I think at this point, maybe one of the worst case scenarios is that you get less 2-start weeks out of him if they either skip a start or push him back a day, goes on 6-day rest, 5 day, extra days rest.
And I don't expect the stats out of anybody in the second half we got it from him in the first half to be that good, but I do expect him to be a top 5 guy going forward.
Fair. And then that's all you need.
Yep.
All right, last thing before we take a break, going back since, McCullers came from Houston. He's coming from a little bit of a beat-up spot as the Astros are. The one I want to focus on here is Brice Matthews. He hits the IL with a left knee sprain. The Astros replace him on the roster with Lucas Spence. Brice Matthews is one of those guys. It's like we keep thinking he's going to get more playing time because of other injuries and moving into different positions. It didn't always move in that direction, but he did have his moments of glory. Now he's out for a little bit here. I'm assuming easy kind of drop in most scenarios for Matthews, but is Lucas Spence anybody that we should be paying attention to?
Maybe. he got to start right away on Friday with Matthews, and Matthews coming into the break had played 5 out of 6 games. He hadn't played the previous 7. Mm-hmm. right. That was because they sent Jake Myers down and started giving Matthews those starts. So we might see Lucas Spence, the last 2 guys that were getting regular center field appearances for Houston are now gone. He's kind of does a little bit of most things, but not a lot of anything in Houston's lineup. If he can go out there and hit close to 250, he was hitting 250 in the minors this season, 278 plate appearances thus far, moderate power, just 6 home runs. But if he can get that the rest of the way, and another double-digit stolen bases because he has 13 in those 63 games in the minors this season. His runs and RBI numbers are there because he does a little bit of everything. Doesn't strike out a ton. His strikeout rate 23.7% this year. Walks almost 10% of the time. So in this lineup, I think he can add to our counting stats, especially the runs, RBI, and hopefully some stolen bases with a decent average. But there's not going to be a lot of home runs, but maybe a handful. So in 15s, I think it may be worth keeping an eye on, seeing the playing time he gets the next couple of days over the weekend. And if he's in those games, he may be getting some run here in center field for Houston.
Yeah, just assume the only one he's really competing for time in center field is Taylor Trammell, who's still on the roster, but he was the one starting the 6 games prior to Brice Matthews taking it. And then it didn't seem like it was like a platoon because they had a good mix of lefties and righties that they were facing before the break. They were just giving all of a sudden they just flipped the switch and changed their mind. Oh, I find Brice, you get in there for the next 4 or 5 days. And so we'll see. I mean, obviously, like you said, Spence got the start in center field on Friday. Trammell coming on or riding the bench, but we'll kind of see what happens over the weekend with those 2 guys splitting time out there. In that
kind of a side note here for Houston as well, if I roster Jeremy Pena, I'm pretty comfortable with what Houston believes his health situation is at the moment, because they sent Delgado down and also traded Braden Shoemake as a part of that deal with Milwaukee.
Mm-hmm.
So this is telling me that they are confident that they're going to have Jeremy Pena the rest of the way.
Yeah, that makes sense. And obviously coming off the IL, going right back to the top of the lineup, and right back at the top of the lineup coming out of the break as well. So Pena is looking like he's in a pretty safe spot. All right, we've got more to talk about, including a bunch of high-end rehab starts coming up, and some guys from the Mets who have come back and will be coming back very soon. We'll get to all that right after this. All right, Kevin, a couple of high-end pitching rehab assignments starting off right out of the break, including Max Fried, who kicks his off today. Blake Snell is set to start his rehab very soon as well over the weekend. And then Clay Holmes is on track to get his rehab going very soon as well. I didn't even look at their rostership, but like, are any of these guys in a situation in any of your leagues where, like a Hunter Green situation where they were maybe dropped and you could find yourself in a position where, all right, they're starting the rehab, they're probably 2 or 3 starts away from returning? Is this a weekend where we could, add them to our rosters?
I think it's probably too late. Blake Snell is rostered 99% in the 12-team online championships. So I fully expect that he's still rostered. I believe Max Fried was held almost everywhere. I held my Max Fried shares.
Sure.
It was starting to get to the point where I'd almost wished I hadn't, but by then we knew this was coming. So I am happy I'm going to have him at this point. I did see a little bit of availability for Holmes, but that was a couple of weeks ago. I am guessing that has disappeared as well. So I think this is more of a
Holmes is widely available in 12s. He's only 21% rostered in online championships, and is pulling that up. And in the main event, 63% rostered. So in over 2/3
Holmes is the guy. Yeah. I'd be jumping on him this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, obviously he doesn't have a date set that at least I could see when his first rehab will be. But just the fact that he's being talked about as very soon coming in, this will be your last weekend to get him at any kind of, reasonable price. If you wait until next weekend, either he'll be grabbed this weekend or they'll start seeing a little bit more of a raise in price. The Mets are, they're waiting to get Clay Holmes back. But in the meantime, they did get Marcus Semien back from the IL in time for their Thursday game. And then they do expect Luis Robert Jr. to return to their active roster over the weekend. He was still rehabbing on Thursday and Friday. So I think he's still in line to. They're expecting him to come back either Saturday or Sunday of this current series against Philadelphia. Marcus Semien coming back. I mean, I think most of us, if not all of us, have already waned on him due to lack of production throughout the course of the year. But do you foresee him, coming in and playing pretty much every day for the Mets that now he's back? And then there's the whole other question about what are the Mets going to do in the next 2 weeks? Is like, are they even going to have a roster at the end after the trade deadline is over? Is Marcus Semien part of it?
I would guess Marcus Semien would be part of it if there is a suitor for him with the state of the New York Mets right now. I spent a lot of time earlier this morning trying to figure this out with Semien and Robert coming back shortly as well for the Mets. And my first inclination was this may be bad for Brett Beatty. And I really don't see another way this goes. Bo Bichette is going to play if he's healthy. Francisco Lindor is going to play if he's healthy. It could mean Jorge Polanco needs to hit well quickly, or he falls out of the DH spot that he's been in 5 of the 7 games since he returned. It could be a problem for Jared Young, who still plays versus every right-handed starter they've faced for the past 3 or 4 weeks. They may miss a little time as well, but I really think Marcus Semien is going to be in this lineup on the infield, and it has to be second base with Lindor there. That pushes Beatty off. So we're really going to have to pay attention to this over the weekend. I was so disappointed when I was looking at this morning when I realized they had played last night and we don't get to see him again tonight. Lineup.
Yeah. I mean, for whatever it's worth, Semien did not start on Thursday. Beatty did get the start at second base on Thursday with Semien off of the IL officially. So could just obviously just be, our first day back. You had all this time off, and you obviously hurt, whatever. But he was playing. Semien hadn't missed a day until he got hurt. He started every single game for the Mets, with most of the time at second base. Actually, every day. He didn't get any DH spots. Also,
and coming into the season, we thought we were going to see Jorge Polanco at first base. We haven't seen that. We're finally seeing him back in the lineup as the designated hitter, and he's got to be the odd guy out when Robert comes back, doesn't he? I mean, you're not taking out AJ Ewing, Juan Soto, and probably not Carson Bench from your lineup. And Robert's got to play, doesn't he?
He's got to play, and you can't throw him back in the outfield on an everyday basis. It's like he's at a Buxton type of level at this point, right? It's like you can't you can't just like, all right, cool, you're ready to go play the outfield every day. Not happening. So yeah, I mean, Polanco isn't going to knock. I mean, maybe he could start at first base against lefties.
Robert's going to get traded. He's on the final year of his contract.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Rob, that's fine. It's just a matter of maybe
till then.
They do need. Well, here's the thing: they do need him to play pretty much every day, then, to prove that he actually is healthy, so that they can get as much as possible for that. So, yeah, we'll see where he ends up going.
We're down to 2 weeks.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I was like, they've got to put him out there every single day, and it may be a DH most days, but he will play some outfield just again to prove to suitors that he is healthy enough to give up a little bit more for, even just for the last 2 months of the season. All right, going just a little bit south of New York to Baltimore. Baltimore loses Blaze Alexander to the IL with a fractured hand, and they recall Christian Encarnacion Strand to take his place on the roster. Is there a place for Strand to actually play and produce for us in Baltimore?
I don't think so. At least not on a regular basis. Unfortunately, I was going to bring this up later, but I will again. Baltimore has a unique schedule this week in that they're facing 3 right-handed pitchers, 3 left-handed pitchers. All 3 of the lefty starters they face are the first half of the week, and all 3 of the righties are next weekend.
Wow.
So for the first half of the week, a couple of guys like Tyler O'Neill and Leota Taveras, I think, are nice pickups. Probably 15-team leagues is where you'd be looking to pick somebody up if you're only planning on using them for half of the week, and they could really give you a little bit of a boost there. But I just couldn't, I don't know. I couldn't add Christian Encarnacion Strand to that list when I was looking at the Baltimore schedule for the week. So it's a wait and see. I kind of doubt we see enough playing time for us to be a big boost for us other than the daily leagues out there.
Yeah, I mean, because Blaze Alexander was playing every day at third base, regardless of handedness. So I'm assuming then you're thinking
Mayo has got one of the starts for a righty here that could be a little bit of a boost for Mayo. I mean, it's only been one game and he's got the start. So,
but he got the start against a righty. Mayo had been playing predominantly just against lefties before.
Exactly. So that's already one hit. I know it's lots of times players don't play that first game they're available when they get called up due to travel and such and other things. He'll be available off the bench, but I got to see more before I'm interested in CES.
Yeah, fair enough. Let's just stay in the DMV area and go down to Washington. The Nationals traded away once a really highly regarded prospect in Robert Hassell III to Pittsburgh for nothing more than just money. They traded him for cash considerations. Also, on top of that, they lost Drew Millis to the IL with a left index finger fracture and brought in other highly regarded prospect Harry Ford to fill in the catcher position for Millas. So does Robert Hassell actually free up any other playing time for anybody else? And does he have a role in Pittsburgh more so than he was seeing in Washington?
Maybe in Pittsburgh, but Washington, we really want to figure this out for our fantasy teams, Adam, because they get to go to Colorado for the first half of the week, and then the second half of the week they're back home, but against this horrendous Arizona pitching that we have going right now. So Washington has one of the top schedules for the week for their hitting lineup. So this is something I am definitely interested in. They faced a lefty here on Friday coming out of the break, and right out of the break, Luis Garcia Jr. With the day off. And also Harry Ford did get the start versus the lefty over Keibert Ruiz right out of the break. That tells me Harry Ford's at least getting playing time versus lefties. I would think even with a fresh call up, Keibert Ruiz, your main catcher, would get the first start coming out of the break. Right. Chaparro is getting starts versus lefties. He's been getting that all season, not doing much for us with them. So that's not really a consideration here. So they also have a split week, 3 righties, 3 lefties. They face 2 of their lefties over the weekend, 2 out of 3 games. Jacob Young is back in the lineup. I was a little worried. He was still listed day to day for the last couple of days of the break for missing those 2 games going into it. Cruz out there. Yeah, it seems crazy, but I don't think this affects their lineup a whole lot other than Harry Ford getting some of the at-bats from behind the plate.
Yeah, the question is, does Ford get more time behind the plate than Millis was getting? I'm
led to believe he gets 3 starts this week if they're starting him versus a lefty over Ruiz first game out. I could be completely wrong on that, and maybe I'm reading too much into this, but that's intriguing to me.
Yeah. So even if it seemed to be Ruiz and Millas was closer to like a 70-30 split, and I venture to guess, especially with Ford's pedigree and what he can possibly produce.
At least 50,
Even if
50
it's
for
not
him,
a
maybe.
handedness thing, it's closer to a 60-40 than a 70-30. And that's, something just to keep an eye on at least.
Yeah, I kind of forgot about Ford. We were excited about him 2-3 years ago. I need to dig a little deeper to see how he's been doing.
I think the last time we talked about Ford was right at the end of spring training when he didn't make the roster, and we were a little surprised, especially since Ruiz was being a little underwhelming last year. Thought that it made sense for Ford to be up there to compete for that catching, starting catching position, really. But finally made it, and we'll see what opportunity they give to him and what he can do with it.
Anybody in Washington's lineup you think's getting at bats though this week is a nice pickup.
There you go. Yeah, just due to the locations of their games.
And the pitching they're facing.
The A's call up prospect third baseman Tommy White, and they also DFA Aaron Savali, obviously not related due to position eligibility. But any interest in White, in what any kind of, just because they're calling him up doesn't mean he's actually going to play. But you're going to take notice of any hitter that's coming up for the Athletics due to their park.
I don't think there's much here because I think Nick Kurtz is coming right back early next week, and maybe Zach Geloff as well. So unfortunately, I don't think there's going to be much here for Tommy White. Athletics have had all kinds of injuries. They got 3 guys back right before the break: Jacob Wilson, Tyler Soderstrom, and Shea Langeliers. He'd only missed a couple days. Langeliers, all those guys were back and healthy coming into the break, and the 2 guys that missed 4 games before it, we think we're getting back close to the minimum, if not the minimum, Nick Kurtz and Zach Geloff. So I don't think there's a lot here for Tommy White or Donovan Walton, who they also got from the Angels and is in the lineup at second base here on Friday evening. They're not going to keep Kurtz or Zach Geloff if he continues to perform the way he has been over the past couple of months.
Yeah, I mean, Tommy White, I did mention he's a third base prospect. He did start at first base to jump off your comment about obviously Kurtz coming back and taking that role.
The guy in this lineup that has played every single day since he got called up on June 29th, Joshua Kuroda Grauer, JKG. He plays every single day, and it's almost like a Mauricio Dubon when they're at home. I would like him in my lineup just because he's going to get the runs and RBI and hopefully a decent batting average when that lineup's clicking. But he doesn't seem to have much power or speed, unfortunately, at least at the major league level.
Yeah, they're still playing him in the middle of the lineup. Most of the time in around the 7 spot, but he's got a lot of 5 spots. He actually, right before the break, he was in the 2-hole. He led off one game against the lefty.
Those were both versus lefties, so that's worth keeping an eye on as well.
All right, and the last thing we will note on here is, again, probably not something we're too worried about, but another waiver claim here. After being DFA'd by the Detroit Tigers, Jamaih Jones got picked up by my Boston Red Sox. I don't see a ton here personally, but let me know if you see something that I'm missing, even as the Red Sox fan.
I don't expect to see him much, if at all, this week. He is a short side platoon bat, a very good one in my opinion. He hasn't performed as well this year as he did last year in that role, but I still think he has that potential. But the Red Sox are set to face 5 righties this week.
Yeah, I don't see him getting beyond if there's other kind of injury, or especially with the Red Sox where they are right now. They're just the most frustrating team to be a fan of, because it's like as soon as you bring yourself to be okay with the fact that they're terrible and they're going to trade and they're going to make some trades at the deadline to get better for next year or the year after, they bring you right back in. They're like a half a game out from the wild card and all that going into the break, and you're like, all right, now what do they even do? Now they're at a point, it's like, what are they even do? We talked about this on our last one of the last episodes. It's like there's a lot of teams that you have to jump. There were a lot of teams, especially in the American League wildcard hunt, that were really close, but there's a lot of them. So even the ones that are at the bottom, even though it's 4 or 5 games out, it doesn't seem like it's that far. There's still 4 or 5 teams you have to jump. And the Red Sox have started doing that, which is almost more frustrating than if they had done nothing.
What's intriguing though, is at least for where they have played in the field over the past couple of months, Jamaih Jones is the only bench outfielder that Boston has right now, and we don't expect to see Yoshida out there, so maybe he could fall into a little more playing time than we think. However, that would be very short-lived. They'd get somebody like Nate Eaton back up to get out there, but he's the only bench outfielder they have right now.
That's an excellent point. Yeah, I mean, not that they couldn't. They sent right before the break, they sent Nate Eaton down, and he had been filling it. He had been the bench outfielder at the time, so it's not as though they have nobody who they couldn't call up to fill that spot. But why not give Jones a little bit of a opportunity here, as he was just kind of sitting there on waivers?
This is what I think. I know that Romy Gonzalez is more of a corner guy in DH, and Monasterio is the backup shortstop. That probably keeps him in this spot. But it would be very beneficial to have Jamaih Jones versus lefties and another backup outfielder. I don't know if they have like Romy Gonzalez, I think, has played outfield in the past.
Sure.
Somebody that I think they want him and Jamaih Jones, someone like that, so that they don't have to use Jones versus righties if they need an outfielder. That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah. You still got a guy by the name of Christian Campbell just kind of sitting there. He had been playing pretty much second base the entire season in Worcester, though he did fill in at center field more than a handful of times. Did start in center field before in his in the past, both in Boston and in Worcester. So definitely a name to just keep an eye on. We'll see. Like I said, they have guys that they could call up and put and be another option, even if it is just off the bench. And of course, Roman Anthony out there just kind of doing a lot of nothing, staying injured for what seems like will be the rest of the season at this point. So, all right. Well, that's, because of the break, it always seems like there's not as much news happening, especially when the non-news is the loudest part in Junior Caminero, being, mysteriously hurt for about a minute. But so let's get right into our recommendations here per category. And we are going to do that after this break. All right, Kevin, like I said, lots of news going on. We're not that much news, or at least not much that we're talking about. Of course, there's all the other news that you could be hearing about on a daily basis if you're listening to the First Pitch podcast over on the Pitcher List Podcast Network feed or on its own feed. Of course, Nick Pollock has his Plus Pitch podcasts every day talking about all the starting pitching results for the previous day and what to expect over the next day or two as well for streaming options. So make sure you're listening to those. But Kevin, we're not here to talk about pitching yet. We're here to talk about hitting first. So let's get into our power categories: home runs, RBI. Who is out there after the break who can take advantage? A lot of. You've already started mentioning like the different how teams are lining up their rotations to mix and match their lefties and their righties. Are we taking advantage of? Are we able to take advantage of that, or is it more of a situation where it's like, all right, this is actually making it more difficult because you can't take advantage of those platoon bats if they are mixing and matching every other day?
Well, yes, I am doing that, but at the same time, I'm starting out in Miami, and they face 6 out of 6 right-handed pitchers this week.
There we go.
And similar to who was it I was talking about earlier when I said also the pitching matchups they look to face this week? Miami looks to have some nice matchups. Javier, Blanco, Marquez, Vasquez, Buehler for their 3 home games versus San Diego. So, and all of them versus righties. Coming into, well, when I did the episode with Vlad Sedler that you brought up in the opening a couple of weeks ago, he brought up Heriberto Hernandez, who was a guy that at the time for about 3 weeks, I had been wanting to be able to bring him up, and he just wasn't getting enough playing time to do that. And then he finally started getting some playing time. And as Vlad mentioned 2 weeks ago, it had started to disappear. We recorded on July 3rd, and he hadn't been playing every day. All of a sudden, beginning on July 3rd, he played every game from there to the break and had an amazing week. So Heriberto Hernandez is 100% rostered in the 15-team main events due to everybody paying attention to that. But he is only 75% rostered in OCs. And with these pitching matchups and his everyday playing time, those 25% of online championships he's available in, I think will be gone this weekend. He'll be 100% rostered there. Mm-hmm. His teammate, Griffin Conine, does have availability in 15s as well, 78% rostered. He's only 3% rostered in 12-team online championships. And when he first came back a couple of weeks ago, he started out 3 for 20. There was a little bit of talk about, oh, are we interested in Griffin Conine? He had a horrible week or week and a half, and everybody forgot about it. Well, over the final 10 days coming into the break, he was 12 for 37, 3 home runs, 7 RBIs, 7 runs scored. So Griffin Conine with these pitching matchups and all of them being versus righties is my number 1 target for power this week. I mentioned the Baltimore 3 lefties first half. For that reason, I like Tyler O'Neill, 7% and 15, 0%, because he's mostly a short side platoon bat. And then a guy that had kind of slowed down a little bit, but gets to face 4 out of 7 left-handed starting pitchers this week. And so I think he'll be back to what we were seeing 3-4 weeks ago out of Nolan Arenado. Fully rostered in 15s, but available in half of 12s. And I would use Arenado in a 12-team league this week. Absolutely. So a few guys for some power there.
The name that stands out when I scan through PLBot's weekly projections is interesting only because to talk about him in the power category, it's interesting to talk about somebody who's moved into the leadoff spot, and that's Matt Vierling of the Tigers, facing off against in going into Chicago and then facing going into Kansas City, hosting Kansas City in the second half of the week. They've got the full 7 game schedule as well, but love the fact that you're going into Wrigley in July for even a handful of games. They are another team that should be alternating against righties and lefties, but Vierling doesn't seem to be in like a platoon per se. Like the days he gets off, it doesn't seem to be handedness related. And he'd been starting the majority of games leading into the break, got to start again in the leadoff spot for the Tigers coming out of the break as well. But he's got some pop, and against the likes of Jameson Taillon, David Peterson, and Colin Ray as his pitching matchups against the Cubs. I like that opportunity for him, even if he does move away from that. I mean, obviously in an RBI situation, there's not as much opportunity there for the RBI, but you call this a run play, call it an RBI play or a power play. It's probably best put into the opportunity section based on that. But yeah, Matt Vierling that popped on the PLBot recommendations for both power and opportunity. So
he got a playing time jump right before the break. He had been playing mostly against lefties and 1 or 2 righties here and there. And then after sitting versus 5 straight righties, he played 6 out of 7, and 3 of those were against righties. 3 out of 4 versus righties, and faced all 3 lefties. So if that continues, then that's a great option coming out of the break there.
All right, well, let's move then into the actual runs and stolen base category, your speed categories, Kevin. Who is popping out to you as being available and can help us in those categories?
Well, for the same reason as Tyler O'Neill for power, I like Leody Taveras for speed. Brought that up earlier with their schedule, the lefties first half. I probably would have him out of my lineup for the weekend. Don't expect to see him more than 1 game, and maybe not even that. So that's a play there for just the first half. But there's a couple of guys in Atlanta that neither one of them are rostered. Jim Jarvis, we have seen now begin to get a majority of the playing time at shortstop for Atlanta. He's only 8% rostered in 15s, 0% in 12s. Brewer Hinklin appears to be Yastrzemski's replacement in left field. He is 0% rostered anywhere. The two of them have stolen 57 bases combined at Gwinnett this year. So
that seems good.
Either one of them, get them in your lineup, with the caveat that one of them's gone when Acuna comes back, in my opinion, because I think Dubon is either going to shift. He's either going to shift to shortstop and Jarvis is gone, or he's going to shift to the outfield and Hinklin is gone. So if you have an inclination on where Dubon is going to get a majority of his playing time, go with the other one. If you're just doing it for this week and a short-term thing, pick the one you like. Although we may see Acuna later in the week. I think don't remember for sure on that, but I think he's close to coming back, beginning his rehab this weekend. But the one of these guys that ends up sticking might have some long-term value here as well.
Yeah. The one that pops for PL Bot is, I am curious about the playing time for the entire week, but Jonathan Clase for Toronto had been, he had been given some playing time right before the break. He did not start coming out of the break for the Blue Jays, but that's not to say that he doesn't get 2 starts over the weekend. He has not stolen a base yet this year in his short stint, but it is kind of his calling card in general. So if Toronto does give him a little bit more run in left field coming over the weekend, might be somebody just worth throwing out there if you're looking for some extra speed.
Yeah, and I believe he's hit a home run or 2. George Springer is playing in the outfield on Friday. We're not going to see that going. This may be the only game the rest of the season. He's had 5 days off. Let's let him play the outfield. He's going back to designated hitter tomorrow. So.
Exactly. Yeah, Clase did have 2 home runs since getting called up. He's had a couple of multi-hit games as well. So yeah, I could totally see him getting a little bit more runway as the season keeps going.
Yeah, maybe not every day, but close to every day, I think is pretty safe for him right now.
Yeah. All right, we'll talk about some actual opportunity. More than a handful of teams do have a 7-game work week. We have Tampa Bay, Toronto, Cleveland, Detroit, Kansas City, Minnesota, Atlanta, St. Louis, Arizona, and San Diego all playing 7 games. Nobody has 5 games next week. Colorado.
One point to that real quick, Adam, for those in daily leagues, everybody plays Monday. Those 10 teams that play a 7-game week are the only teams playing on Thursday. You may want to start looking ahead at what you want to do for Thursday in your daily leagues.
That's a good call out there. Yeah, but at least nobody like you said, everybody plays on Mondays, so nobody's got the 5-game work week. Right. Colorado's splitting their time with 3 hosting the Nationals, as you mentioned earlier, and then they will be in Milwaukee for the weekend. Cincinnati will be away from Great American Small Park all week, being having 3 games in Seattle and then 3 games in St. Louis. And then the Athletics also are leaving their ballpark to another team to play in all week, AAA team, and they will be playing 3 in Arizona and 3 in Minnesota over the weekend as well. So with all that in mind and anything else, Kevin, who has a good opportunity ahead of themselves that doesn't necessarily fit specifically in the speed or power categories?
I'm looking at Alan Roden in Minnesota. All of a sudden, the last 5 games before the break and the first one coming out, he's their everyday right fielder, like he's been doing this for years. And he has 16 plate appearances at the major league level this season, only 169 in his career. But he in the minors, he's again not going to really hurt you anywhere and not be a huge benefit in any one category. But his all-around game, I think, is very nice while he's getting this playing time, especially in the deeper leagues. In 170 plate appearances this season in the minors, 9 home runs, 3 stolen bases. 9 home runs doesn't sound like a lot, but 170 plate appearances is not a lot for this point in the season either. That's a 30 home run pace, having 9 and 170 plate appearances. So it's got some power, moderate speed, should help with the counting categories. Projections have him at right around a 245 to 260, most of them right at 250 for batting average. Through his first 16 plate appearances, he's at 214. I'm not putting a lot into that yet. And he's always been a walk close to, if not more than he strikes out guy. Love that. So I think Alan Roden here might run with this job for a while.
Very nice. The name that pops out for PL Bot is Joey Ortiz, who's been getting everyday run at third base for minutes for Milwaukee ever since David Hamilton went on the IL, and that should not change over the course of the next week. They don't have the 7 games, so they will be off on Thursday, but they get 3 against the Mets, rotating between Peralta, Thornton, and Christian Scott as their opponents. And then, as we mentioned earlier, they will be hosting Colorado. So, nice to get, nice to get games against Colorado pitching, no matter whether you're in Colorado or out of Colorado in general.
Absolutely.
Especially with Verlander not an option.
He's playing more consistently third base than Hamilton was before he went down. Mm-hmm. Hamilton was getting a couple days a week off, and Ortiz has played every single day since he went down.
Exactly. Yeah. And the production he's putting out is not going to wow you, but it's not hurting you either. It's very consistent as is the playing time. So yeah, that's the whole idea of the opportunity category, right? All right, let's get into pitching, Kevin. But before we do that, we'll take one more break. All right, Kevin, as we've been struggling all season, we still need to scrape at some wins and some strikeouts. I realized I made quite a bit of movement in these categories over the course of the last week without even realizing it. And I don't know if it was me doing better or just everybody else struggling just as much as I was to start the season. But either way, I need to keep it going to where I am in those leagues. So who should I be eyeballing for our volume categories here?
Well, one guy that I am interested in that actually has I think he's got a 2-step this week. Let me double check that really quickly because I might have just made that up. Where'd they go? Tyler Mahle. The reason I was kind of interested in him, and then I was reading Nick Pollock's The List article that came out a day or two ago for the second half, and his notes on Tyler Mahle and the heading for the category of this whole group of pitchers, arms to consider this week. And then Tyler Mahle, this made me say, yep, I'm going to go after him where he's available. Nick said he took advantage of Rocky Road and has a solid schedule ahead. I wonder if he can go on a decent run. And yes, now I do remember without even looking the two teams he's facing this week, my Royals that have been horrendous offensively for a month or so now, and the Los Angeles Angels. That's his 2-step this week. So love that for Tyler Mahle as a definite pitcher I'm interested this week. Andre Palante, he's been kind of a maybe, and it's kind of funny. Nick has bleh in his write-up with him, and that's exactly what he's been. I look at him every week, and I'm like, I can make a case for this. Also, I'm not excited about it at all, but I think with where we are now, he was another one that is really sticking out. A couple of guys that may have been dropped in leagues, and I fell into this with Davis Martin. He was dropped in one of my leagues, and I picked him up and ate that 9-run outing. And he'd only had one bad outing when he was dropped in this league, and I picked him up and ate the next 3. But he's not going to be as good as he was early in the season, but he's better than that. I like him going forward where he's been dropped. Kumar Rocker has been kind of up and down. A guy I like in certain matchups, and I like him coming up this week as well. That was my main ones. Maybe Colin Ray. I have a question mark by him. That means I want to look a little deeper. But who's PL Bot got for us this week?
Man, well, it's interesting. There's nobody. There's usually
nobody that's available, right?
That's the thing.
Yeah.
Like, usually when I look at PL Bot's projections for the week for both pitchers and hitters, I will then filter out anybody who's available in more than 50% of 15 teamers, right? I really want to see who's actually available to make these recommendations. And when I do that for the pitchers, the only 2 players that show up as available are Lance McCullers Jr. And David Peterson. Peterson at 45% rostered in 15 teamers and McCullers at 0. But when you go down to the 12 teamers, you get some more options, whether or not you want to hold your nose and do it or not. That's really up to you. Anthony K comes up as just 21% rostered, closer to the top of the list. Grayson Rodriguez ends up being closer to the top of the list. Again, these are nose holding. The name that interests me the most, that I have the most questions about, is somebody, if you want to spend some money on somebody like Connor Prelip, who's currently on the IL with a blister, but whether or not he can come back from that blister early enough to be productive this week, question mark. But even if he doesn't, is this like enough of a stash to put him back on your roster? I dropped him somewhere once he went on the IL. The blister obviously is a concern. A young pitcher on a team like Minnesota is another concern, just as far as like how many innings he's going to get the rest of the way. With those 2 things in mind, I'm probably not spending a lot of time considering stashing him on this IL spot, but he is somebody who I feel has been doing better under the hood than his production leading up to the IL stint may have suggested. So he'd be somebody I'd be interested in probably, next week or the week after.
Yeah. Speaking of Minnesota, Bailey Ober has a lot of availability in 12s, only 40% rostered, but he's 98% rostered in 15s. Exactly. Tyler Mahle that I just brought up. We talk about this throughout the season, but I think this week especially, 15-team league players knew if they need pitchers for this coming week, they had to get them last weekend. 12-team players, it's harder to do that in 12-team leagues. We're turning our rosters on a weekly basis to use players this week. So the big differences isn't just due to the 3 extra teams and more players being rostered. It's due to when they're being picked up in the different types of leagues. And Tyler Mahle, 87% in those 15s, like 3% in 12s. The 15 league players got him last week. The 12s can still get him this week for that 2-step.
Exactly. That's usually what I put, especially on the pitching side. When I see those big gaps in rostership, it's mostly just due to the 15 teamers needing, not even just thinking that far ahead. It's like you're forced to go that far ahead, whether it be an extra week or even 2 weeks ahead. All right. Well, this is the hardest part. I can't use PL bot for ratios. It's just that you can't do it. So you gotta help me out here, Kevin. ERA, WHIP. We're still at a point in the season where we're at a point in the season, and you talked about this with Vlad. It's like you're not looking to better those ratios. You're just looking to stabilize, right? You're just looking to tread water. And the guys you pick up in order to get the ratio help at this point are not helping you jump over the next person in your standings. They're just making sure that the person below you doesn't jump you. So if you're also having to hold your nose and grab one of these starters that you're looking for volume, you might need to pair them with somebody who's going to, go 3 innings in the week and not let up any runs to kind of even things out. So who are you adding to your list this week in the ratios?
Yeah, Adam, the problem that I am seeing for this week is most of the relievers that we have talked about throughout the season, if there's any newer ones to add, I don't see a lot of guys that are going to pitch over an inning at a time this week. So there's not a huge help, but we do get that stabilization. That's why I'm talking about that. And this time of year, that will become more and more the case in my opinion. But a guy like Cameron Boozer in Tampa is projected for over 2 innings this week. He's got nice projections for ERA below 3 and a WHIP below 1 for the week. Tyler Holton in Detroit, we haven't talked about him this season. He's been one of our favorites for a couple of years now there. Brock Stewart, now that he's a Dodger, he's back in this conversation. I may have brought him up 3 or 4 weeks ago. But and there was one, Eric Miller in San Francisco. I think they're at home at least half of the week, so that's always interesting. Oh yeah, and the other 3 are at Kansas City, and the 3 at home are against those Angels. So a similar schedule to the same Tyler Mahle's schedule. So yeah, there's a few names. Unfortunately, I don't see anybody that gets 1 2/3 or maybe 2 innings at a time that I'm really interested for this week.
Our final actual category saves. We're at a point in the season where this is just kind of fun to speculate on, right? Because the trade deadline just being about 2 weeks away. If you haven't already started speculating on who's going to move into a closer spot due to a trade, you really need to start doing that now. So how much thought have you given into that? And the obvious trade of Aroldis Chapman is no longer as obvious as it once was,
right?
As due to the points we brought up earlier. Is what other situation are you feeling the most strongly about as far as like that guy's leaving? Now we just need to figure out who's going to be the guy that takes his job.
Well, we have Rick Graham, right? Of course, there's Greg Jewett out there, and also our friend Mike Carter looks at this a lot more deeply than I do. And in a Discord yesterday, he simply posted roster Luke Weaver. So obvious. The reasons are fairly obvious. If the Mets do end up selling here over the next couple of weeks, but I value his opinion, and it's as good of a spec as any at this time, especially because we expect good results if he does get the opportunity. Right.
Yeah, exactly. The trouble is, as I said before, and you brought it up before a couple weeks ago, the wild card situation, and we've seen this over the course of the last couple of years, does muddy things quite a bit. It doesn't make the obvious sellers as obvious as they maybe once were, which is fun as far as like having the competition, having everybody, especially fans, feel as though you have a chance throughout the course of the end of the last 2 months of the season. But it does make things a little bit more difficult to kind of identify who who you could take advantage of. The Mets, the obvious example, kind of the low hanging fruit here. I do wonder if, you have to be paying attention to all the different situations and whether or not somebody like Pete Fairbanks, whether it's production or a trade or an injury, is worth. I mean, is there somebody in Miami even worth rostering as a stash, even if Fairbanks were to either lose that job for whatever reason? We've already seen him lose the job for injury in the past and come back and get it back. But whether that's Calvin Fauché or Michael Peterson being the option, I don't even know if that's worth the stash. And that's the other thing. There's a reason why these teams are trading away their top closer, because they're not, the opportunities for saves aren't always there to begin with. So the Mets still have an opportunity to win close games. So I think the Luke Weaver call out is a pretty solid one, of course. All right, Kevin,
keep an eye on your wire as well. Play teams with huge leads, right? After this week, we have 10 weeks to go, 10 fab periods, 10 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So teams with big cushions will start dropping a closer if they have more than 2.
Yeah, I think it's smart for teams who have that cushion to wait until after the trade deadline.
I try. Yep.
Yeah.
But
because one, you want to leave as much of that opportunity for those below.
I try to hold them as long as I can, period. I don't want to just give saves away to someone else, but it comes to a point where you need your spot.
Mm-hmm.
And they're no longer.
That's when you collude, right? That's when you call up. That's when you call up the team that's like 4 spots below you. Be like, hey, I'm about to drop whoever. Make sure you get your bids ready for next
that
week.
Has $800 in fab left. Spend
hey,
$400 on this guy.
I'm not actually saying colluding. Okay, I just want to make sure everybody out there knows that. Obviously, I'm kidding. But we still have an opportunity to stash some guys to play the wild card game, Kevin. I'm going to ask you about that selection right after this break. All right, Kevin, if you do still have some flexibility to stash somebody, we talked about some rehabs that are coming back. You talked about that with Vlad on the last episode as well. Just the idea that we are seeing more rehabs of all-star caliber players coming back into the fold. Or, with the trade deadline, we will start seeing some other call-ups as well. Who fits into the wild card category for you this week?
Yeah. Couple of veterans I want to talk about. I think they have been grabbed in most spots at this point. But a guy like Trevor Story, who, it was kind of funny. I picked him up in the league that we're in together, you and I, Adam.
Yeah.
Because he was my backup in my waterfall to Luis Robert. You got Robert, and so I ended up with Story. I think you'll get Robert available to you for your lineup more quickly than I will get Story, but hopefully not by much.
Sure.
So there are guys like that available out there. And then, a lot of the minor league guys that we have talked about this season have eventually been called up. And I'm wondering now about Andrew Pinckney for Washington. He's down in Rochester at their AAA. 12 home runs, 17 stolen bases, and he's doing it with a nice 289 average. And we're seeing, Washington have this exciting offense, surprising to quite a few people, if not everybody. At least I don't think anybody thought they would be this fun. There were some indications, if James Wood's doing what he is doing, and CJ Abrams and these guys, that this could be a fun offense. But we've seen Jacob Young banged up. He's the preferred center fielder there in Washington. Dalen Lyle, they don't like playing him versus lefties all the time. James Wood, they like to DH now and then. So Pinckney is someone I think we might see for this stretch run. And if so, he's a little bit of everything kind of guy, which can really help our teams down the stretch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like the idea of looking again to the stretch run at this point of the season, whether or not it be somebody who's coming back from injury or getting the call up at the last cup of coffee, if you will. So yeah, excellent name to keep in mind and consider as rosters start changing at the major league level between now and what is it, August 3rd officially is the deadline, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, yeah. I believe so. Is that Wednesday? I think it's a Wednesday.
Yeah, it's a random. When did they change that rule? Where it's
I don't know, but it has to be like within 4 days of July 31st instead of just July 31st. That was much easier.
Yeah, and why it can't just always be a Sunday or in my fantasy league we made it specifically. It's always the Sunday after the major league roster MLB trade deadline. So it's just nice to have a nice clean thing, and for it to be on a random middle of the week thing is just all right.
Yeah,
whatever.
I have a league where we just very similarly the Monday after the major league break. Sure. Yeah. Or the major league deadline, right?
Yeah, but it seems arbitrary when they end up picking the day. Like you said, it has to be 3 or 4 days around the 31st. But I'm like, all right, well, maybe that means they're always going to pick the same day of the week. It's always going to be Saturday or Sunday or whatever. But why Wednesday? I guess Wednesday most of the time is the end of a series. But like Sunday is almost always the end of a series. Whatever. Rant over. Kevin, give me a more productive rant here to close it out here as we head into the 18th fab period of the 2026 season.
Yeah, I'm gonna go back to one of my oldies but goodies, and that's most, if not quite all of us. I know some people got into it for opportunities to make money, but a very large percentage of fantasy baseball players, we started playing this because it's fun. Mm-hmm. We enjoy this. Right now, specifically, I am already tired of hearing, and I don't read an article and I'm turning the channel or muting it when we're talking about CBA stuff. Nothing we do or say affects it. Just have fun, enjoy the games, play our fantasy baseball, react to what happens when it happens. So many people are talking, we're not even going to, and I get it with companies. Like somebody mentioned a comment, like NFBC right now probably can't book Vegas because they can't guarantee them we're coming.
Yep, sure.
I understand there are some people that have to care, and I'm sorry for them. We don't, because the emotion we put into it doesn't mean a thing. Don't waste it. Use your energy on enjoying the games and enjoying our fantasy teams. And instead of reading a CBA article, get a head start on your fab for the weekend.
There you go. And then, I mean, it'll sound like a little bit of too much of a shout out directly for Pitcher List, but like really focus on the platforms that are giving you the most joy. As far as when it comes to baseball as a whole, and realize that just like NFBC, all these sites that you visit and that you frequent and then you interact with, they are also businesses that are going to struggle coming up if there is any kind of stoppage, which we are all expecting there to be some form of stoppage, even though MLB just put out their schedule for next year on time. And I think the opening day is March 24th or 25th or something like that.
If your Fangraphs membership expires in the middle of a stoppage, still renew it.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm getting at. Go ahead and spend, throw the extra $5 at the Patreon that you haven't had in a while, or whatever the case may be.
That's a great idea, Adam. I canceled a couple of my Patreons. I just didn't have time to get to them.
Sure.
This past off season, I'm gonna go sign up for sign back up for a couple of them right now when we're off here.
It'll show that it'll show them and the creators that, hey, there still is this, undying desire to talk about baseball in a positive way. But yeah, go ahead, go out there, support whoever it is that brings you the most joy in this, or multiple of these sites that bring you joy when it comes to talking about baseball. With that being said, that's going to do it, Kevin, for episode 262 of On the Wire. I am Adam Howe on behalf of Kevin Hastings. Thanks for listening. We bid you goodbye.
Welcome back, everybody.